Welcome to FinOps in Action. I'm your host, Alon Arvatz. Each week, I'll sit down with FinOps experts to explore the toughest challenges between FinOps and engineering. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm really excited about this episode because I'm hosting an amazing FinOps leader and a real friend. He leads a team that manages over 150 vendors, hundreds of millions in budget, and has realized over $70 million in savings in the last 3 years. He's a Focus maintainer and the one and only Focus ambassador. I'm happy to welcome Senior Manager of FinOps at Twilio, Larry Advey. Larry, how are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Great to hear in Ohio, and glad to be here, Elon.
That's great. So let's get straight to business, Larry. What do you think should be the FinOps practitioner's top priority?
That's a great question. There's lots of things to pick and choose from on this one, but I'll say, first and foremost, being able to communicate and listen. So, and I say that because without listening to your potentially numerous stakeholders and personas, and not being able to or successfully being able to communicate with them, it's very challenging to make headway on anything across the FinOps framework. And so if your leadership is really focused on, say, allocation as a problem, that's something you need to look at. But if they're focused on, say, optimization, or maybe Kubernetes costs, or maybe they're really interested in focus. We've had a lot of good comments there and some good feedback there. It does really well for someone in the FinOps role to align with leadership, align with engineers, and working to listen and understand where other folks are at, and you can certainly lead. Say, like, we need to optimize, right? But plant the seed, work down that path on things. When they're really focused on something else, it's going to be much easier for you to get some wins if you're listening and communicating and understanding where their heads are at, so that you can have some good impact and start generating some good stories and reputation, and then lead to, hey, there's these other opportunities over here that you were thinking about initially, but let's talk about it. And these are the things I've seen, or folks or people on my teams have seen, or maybe some of the engineers have seen, right? You're bubbling things up to different people across the board. So, and really TLDR, one size doesn't fit all. So every organization is different. You have lots of different tools and lots of different people. And working at FinOps is definitely a social and communication challenge, but it's also very fun. I love it.
Yeah, and that's actually fascinating, because I think if you take the average person from the street who doesn't know what FinOps is, and you would tell them, hey, there are people that deal with the financial aspects of the cloud, he would imagine like finance people who care about numbers, less about people. Maybe he will think about people who are very, very, strict. And you're saying, hey, actually soft skills are the most important part of the job. Is that because you feel like, every organization is different, you need to adjust yourself to the management or to the priorities of the business?
Right. Being able to be aligned with leadership, with all the way down to engineers, software engineers, product managers, procurement, financial operations folks. My team works very closely with accounting as well, finance, procurement. But we've got 2,000 close friends across R&D, which is great. I love the scale and the challenges that it entails across a suite of products and things that we maintain. So I get to learn about not just the people, but the products and systems and applications, interconnections, and all that stuff. And if I come in with there's the carrot and stick approach, right? uh, if you come in with the stick and you say, we need to cut costs, like we need to slash it by X% or something, right? It's going to put people on defensive nearly immediately. Or if you come in and say, I'm looking at your costs here, and I see that things aren't really being utilized or aren't as efficient as they should be. You'll, especially with engineering, you'll run into, they've built that thing. They've got a sense of ownership and love with the systems that they build. And as a previous engineer, I can relate to that. And if someone came to me with that, I would want to listen and understand, but I would be set, defensively, and it would be more difficult to engage versus someone who's coming with, hey, could you explain to me like what this system is, and like what does it fit in the pipeline of data and the interactions with our customers, and maybe it's an internal backend system or whatever it is, right? I don't know what this system X is called, right? Or what this really does. Could you educate me on this? And I noticed something in the data here. Could you walk me through this? Have you seen this before? Like, first and foremost, or if they haven't, great. Okay, cool. So you can educate them, and you have a good conversation, just asking questions and sharing information and building relationships is really, really important in a space.
And Larry, sounds like you also need a lot of patience if you're a FinOps leader, because like you said, you have to build the relationships, you have to open them to things they weren't aware of, raise their awareness. Do you feel that patience is something that is critical to be successful?
Great point, Elon. Yes, patience is really important. Like being a father, right? Not saying your engineers or your kids or anything like that, but I'm a father. I know you're a father, Elon, and you have patience with your kids. And I had to grow that, right? And thankfully, my kid's a little bit older, so I've been able to grow that skill set personally, and it's also helped me professionally to understand where certain individuals, when I talk to them, I can pretty well understand pretty quick. Are they going to be supporters and aligned with what my what I'm leading with, what I'm I want to have a conversation on, or are they like the other side of the aisle? Are they detractors? Are they going to be less interested in maybe saving money or being more efficient or something, because they're likely focused on something else, right? And they've been told to work on this, or they've got an idea for this, and so working with folks and understanding where they are on the spectrum. Worst case, you plant the seed, you're just doing in basic introductions, and then very likely it'll bloom into something in the future. You'll get an unexpected Slack message from somebody saying, that person you talked to 6 months ago, where you're like, they don't care about this stuff. They're not gonna reach out to me. And I find, having done, I'll say, FinOps for 3 years, specifically, but I've been doing, I'll say, FinOps type work for over a decade now. That folks think about that and like, I had this conversation with Larry or Elon a few months ago. They were talking about this cost thing or anomaly or whatever it was. I'm interested in diving into that now. So I'm going to reach out and boom, you get a message from somebody, and you can re-engage, right? People will remember that. They remember the feeling you bring to the table. And are you someone who's going to be curious and patient? And it goes both ways. It's like, hey, I can't. Engineers have a lot of really good ideas, and sorry, I like my team. Sorry, I can't work on that right now, but I'll add it to the backlog, and I'll get back to you in, a month, 6 months, whatever is realistic. And setting expectations helps a lot with that. And then following through builds the trust, builds the alignment with people, and your reputation then grows, and you can be very successful then. Then you come to the table, 3 years from now, and people know you as someone that keeps their word, and they can trust and openly talk to you and be transparent. So
that's amazing. That's amazing and very satisfying, I'm sure. I am wondering, however, Larry, So Twilio is a very, high performance company for sure. And I'm sure there's also a lot of pressure to show results. So how do you balance, on the one hand, leaning towards long-term results, because you need to build the relationship, build the awareness, build the culture. But on the other side, as a professional that have managers and have leadership that expects him to show results, to also show more of a short-term results.
Yeah, I'll say a good question. Results come in different shapes and forms, right? There's results as in we need to save money, right? There's different ways to do that. Either using commitment-based discounts, so aligning with engineers and product on where they're at, where they're going, and making purchases to optimize your rate, right, from your cloud provider. It could be we're going to negotiate stronger on a particular contract with the vendor, get a better rate, commit more with them or less, or whatever it is, maybe a longer deal. And there's different ways to negotiate and get things going. It's not always about money, right? So you may have an opportunity to work with a very high profile project or team where we want to get costs day one and understand what that looks like day one. And can you teach us and show us how to get that data? And then, oh, great, let's integrate it with some unit data and information and start building out unit economics day one, so we can pivot, right, from a product perspective. Are we making the right decision? Are we getting enough customers on this? Yes or no? Is this good for the customer? Is it good for us as a business? Do we need to improve allocation in a certain area of the business because maybe past M&As we haven't looked at that yet? So we need to bring that over and start working with our either SRE teams or the direct engineers or whomever to increase allocation so that we can understand what those costs are at, and then leadership can look at those reports and look at that data and make good, strong decisions. So it is a lot about, FinOps is a lot about saving money, but I'll say conversely, it's really more maybe about making money at the end of the day. So you start with this one aspect of, you can do some pretty quick wins on some things to potentially save some money, but you're going to run into those at a certain point. And then there becomes how do I transition this into being like a full-blown business optimization, business efficiency practice as opposed to a cost savings team. And that's where I've seen a lot of fellow practitioners move from one end to the other, and be very successful with working with finance and leadership to provide that data, and potentially the board, CEO, et cetera, to where it really drives awesome decisions for the company at the end of the day, and for the customers and others, where, hey, if we're able to reduce our own costs so much, we can reduce the costs to our customers. We're still profitable. They're happy. We're happy. Our board's happy. Stock price is happy. All that stuff, right? So it's a good mix. And going back to what I said initially, if your leadership's all about wanting to save money and cut costs, then focus there, right? But the FinOps framework and really provides that framework and foundation for so much more to do than just saving money, and really making money, and understanding that every engineering decision is a buying decision at the end of the day, and working to build that as part of the culture, so you can work hand in hand and very well aligned and transparent with engineering, and you both be very successful.
So if I'm listening to you, Larry, you're basically saying that the FinOps framework is very wide. And basically within this framework, you are things that are more, I would say, short-term value you can get out of it. And you mentioned rate optimization, buying commitments. And you mentioned gaining visibility into your spend, things like cost allocation and unit economics, and probably doing things about your infrastructure and fixing things in your infrastructure to become more efficient and save on cost that usually take longer time. So basically you want to build a complete program that can serve you short term and long term. Is that accurate?
Right. Yeah. Not like you said. There's definitely more short-term things like rate optimization, but that becomes an operational thing where you have to refresh it either monthly or quarterly, worst case, potentially yearly. Again, depending on how much your finances things can change and how much optimizations you're doing, right? Because the less you have to optimize, the less you spend, the less you have to optimize, and less you have to think about the rate optimization, the savings plans, reserved instances, things like that. But then going into how do you understand your data? Do you have allocations deployed, and are people understanding of what those mean? Are they at the right level even? You don't want everything at a business unit, very, very high level. You want things down at a system or component level, and then a hierarchy built on top of that. So you're able to slice and dice it multiple different ways. And then also the human resources organizational view on with that too. So, a particular group of systems or components goes to a team or a couple of different teams, but you know, like what's doing things, why, and then, like you said, getting the visibility out of it, and then building the economics and the optimizations. Some are a lot easier than others to do. I know, like, on that you're aware of, like we've talked about, but it's what can you do now, what can you do later? You cannot boil the ocean. The framework has got lots of ways to look at, right? The second generation book that came out was over 400 pages long, and it's awesome reference to look at, but you have to focus. You have to go slow to go fast, and so doing the iteration around. Okay, we're gonna focus on allocation this month, or for maybe the quarter, right? We're gonna focus maybe next quarter on rate optimization, or focus on unit economics and things like that. But you cannot boil the ocean and be successful.
Interesting. And Larry, I have a thesis I want to run with you. So I looked recently at the latest State of the FinOps report. And obviously, it was very clear that, waste reduction, which is what we called more of a long-term effort in the organization, was number one by no doubt. And things like cost allocation, unit economics, etc., were lower in priorities. Now, when I talk to practitioners, I don't feel like necessarily unit economics or cost allocation is less important. And this is why my thesis is that there is a maturity process here. When the maturity level of the industry, from rate optimization and cost reporting, we got to a point where we have enough knowledge, experience, tooling to figure it out. But when it comes to engaging with engineers, managing efficiency, drive action to fix the infrastructure aspects, we're not there as an industry. I wonder if you agree with this thesis, and what do you think are the blockers to actually get to a point where this part is resolved as well?
I agree with what you're saying there. I'll say it differently. I think that there's a certain point with allocation where you're good, right? You're good enough, and really allocation is a foundation for everything else to come. So, having spent back in 2023 a lot of time in running that working group within the FinOps Foundation, and really thinking about that, you can't do visualization. You can't do you can't do great optimization or identify like an anomaly and chase it down without good allocation, unit economics, and most other items and capabilities within the framework struggle with that good solid allocation. So you start there, and it becomes just operational, and you're just monitoring that KPI at a certain point, and you're focusing maybe on unit economics, or maybe you're not. But optimization is a clear item where if you've got hundreds of teams or thousands of engineers doing things, you've got people leaving and coming in, and new skill sets and things rotating often, to where it's a kind of a consistent churning item, and you get to meet new people, and you get to educate them, and working with them to optimize in certain ways. But optimization is also tricky, because you don't want to just turn a tool on and have it optimize things automatically, because your systems may not be as resilient as you think, and potentially that system may bring other dependent systems down, and maybe your microservices and components and things aren't as decoupled as you think. And if you go to optimize one thing, either optimizing could be, we found some idle database or VM instances or something, we're going to shut this down. It's like, well, that could have unintended consequences, because maybe in that infrastructure as code, there's a security policy in there that you thought was only used here, but actually enabled lots of other things to work too. And that could have unintended consequences to your production traffic. So doing things that, I heard, a couple decades ago when I first started working in information technology and computer science and things, like nothing tests like production, right? You can't scale up a business like Twilio or all these other, banking industries, whatever. You can't scale that up like in the non-production staging environments like you can in production.
Yeah.
Again, nothing tests like production, unfortunately. So you got to schedule those things at the right time when you go to do things, either the destructive actions of optimizations. But having a good architecture and having a good thing in place to understand that, also, it's not if it's going to fail, it's really when. It's things always happen. It will fail at some point. There'll be something you never thought of, or it could be something you did thought of. You're like, that'll never happen. Like, well, it's likely that'll happen, but what's your either a business continuity disaster recovery plan for when that happens, and are you able to undo that change real quick to bring those resources and things back online because you brought some production systems down and now your customers aren't happy, that sort of thing. But I think, as I'll say, unfortunately, it happens to everybody. But that's the tricky part of optimization. So you want to save money, you want to make things more efficient, but then you have to be careful with what you do there and why and when.
Yeah, nothing tests like production. I'm sure my CTO would love to hear that sentence. So, Larry, would you say that maybe what is missing today is context? So the recommendations around cost optimization should take in consideration context, or provide context that is beyond cost, that goes into performance, applications, so engineers can really get something that is valuable and actionable.
Yeah, actionable insights is a phrase that's been going around more recently here in the past couple of years, and you can't just take the costs for granted. You have to look at your observability data. You have to look at your logs. You have to look at performance, utilization rates, things like that. But it still only tells part of the story, because if you don't understand what that system does within your technology stack and your architecture, that context is very difficult to objectively define, because it's more about it's definitely potentially subjective, where this little system over here, even though there's not a lot of utilization on things, I know we could tweak it right, but it has an API call or something that's very tightly coupled with some of their critical systems that are production customer facing, that can really be troublesome, if you were to tweak something there. So it really leads to the just understanding more and understanding not just, you've got your database over here, your VM here, or you're running this front end or this back end, these these technologies. It's what does this actually do, and what purpose does it actually provide? There's your README files and your Markdown files on GitHub are a great place to look. It's only part of the picture, but having a potential usability or FinOps platform or tool or tools that integrate with your observability stack, so you understand, hey, the data's flowing, over here to this API and then coming back, and then, okay, here's your your items in this linked account, right? But there's still this tightly coupled connection over here. And if that goes offline, then can cause havoc and chaos. So
Makes sense. So, Larry, you are the first Focus ambassador. Can you give us just on a high level what is Focus and why it's important?
yeah, Focus is the FinOps open cost of uses specification. And this is a standard specification to unify billing across clouds and technology. And so you've got your AWS Cure data, your Azure billing data, GCP billing data, et cetera. It's all in different formats, different columns. There are a lot of SaaS companies out there that provide exports, CSV or API, JSON, whatever it is. And you've got potentially hundreds, like my team, over 170 vendors now, where I'll say several dozen of them provide data feeds. The rest of them don't. And so the ones that do provide them are all different. So we try to ingest all that data, and we have a potentially massive ETL process and data warehouse to ingest that data and convert it to a singular data model on. So then we're able to query it and allocate it and actually use it. Focus really helps with that. Focus says, here are the columns, here's how they're defined, and here, if you export in this format, you conform to this, and your end users, your practitioners, your customers will be able to join that data or effectively union that data easily with all other data sets of the same format. Then they don't have to do the ETL processing to convert it from format A into Focus, or from format, A through Z into whatever your custom format is. It's already defined. It's already there. The vision with this is to make it very easy for practitioners like myself and customers to ingest the data, analyze it, and understand where their costs are going and why.
Yeah.
We've normalized a lot of the data, the terms. Spent a lot of time with the cloud service providers. We're spending a lot of time right now with SaaS on that, with the 1.2 coming out in June. We've got some additional columns that are there, almost fully baked and ready to go here. And that'll be really, really transformative over the next several years for really not just FinOps as an industry, but how these companies share the data amongst themselves. And I mentioned it at X back in November last year in Barcelona, but folks that have run across EDI, it's from the 1970s or 80s. It's older than I am, but that was a format that back then tried to do this for financial purchase orders, invoices, things like that, but it wasn't. Anybody who's really used it has really struggled with it. It doesn't have great user experience, usability, interoperability features of it. But Focus really helps with making it as clear and concise as possible, and providing for, first and foremost, the FinOps practitioners in a consistent language model, and then a data model, so that you, engineers, product, and others can consume it across all the different vendors and SaaS companies. Could be data centers, could be network, could be obviously cloud. We started with cloud, but it is really all about costs today, but it's going to get more into other areas in the future. Sustainability, I fully expect, and getting other data that we all care about.
Makes sense. And Larry, I totally understand why Focus is really important when you do reporting for executives that need the high level stuff and cannot look now at different reports for different 150 or 170 vendors. But is Focus also important for your team and for engineering as well?
Yeah, definitely. We've got most our engineers are using, you know, primary cloud service provider, so they're used to their information. But when they look at, say, SaaS company 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and they look at the billing data, it's a bit different between all of them, and it's a bit different enough and disparate enough to where it causes definitely some friction. And so my team, we have to sometimes do conversions there to help engineering to speed them up, and that takes time. But Focus will really help with that from a leadership standpoint, all the way down to your individual contributors, your software engineers, your product managers, etc., such that we're able to understand. Oh, we're using how much of this company's data, or AI is another big one nowadays, right? And the AI companies produce the data in Focus? Like yes, I think absolutely here with 1.2. A lot more extensible coming up, a lot more flexible. So where we can answer the questions like who's driving our AI costs, or who's driving this SaaS company, or this data center, or whatever it is. And we're able to get to having a single pane of glass for all of the costs. And you don't have to go to 50 different places or consoles to find this information. You can go to one and get it all in the same format. And it really makes things, it's really going to make things a lot faster and a lot leaner.
Absolutely. And I can tell you that I personally think that this is one of the more important or most important projects now running by the foundation. And kudos to you for taking a big part of it. I would like us to tackle a certain criticism I heard about Focus, and I'm curious to hear your take on that. So one of the criticism is about the fact that Focus is a one-size-fits-all. So when you work with AWS core data, you have a lot of nuances that are related to AWS billing details that are probably going to be missed or I don't know, dismissed when you work with Focus. I wonder what you think about this perspective and how you tackle it on the foundation level.
That level of criticism, I do agree with, and working with a standard like this and with the vision like we're trying to do here makes trying to do all of the use cases challenging. So we have to prioritize what use cases we look at here versus there. Which columns do we introduce to do this versus that, right? I feel very strongly that we do side on taking the 80-20 rule in a first and foremost in mind, to where we've got a significant amount of columns that are there. Does it handle all the use cases? No. Is it going to? Probably not. But I'll say from my experience and from other practitioners as well, it handles a vast majority. And I'll say it's more than 80% of the use cases that are out there. And there are definitely some edge cases where having the hundreds of columns from the Cur or from Azure's or GCP's exports, or even from a SaaS company, right? Where you would need all that to get 100%. It's okay, because you can get most of what you need with what you have from Focus. I'll say one likely 95% plus. And if you do need some edge use case, you can either go to the Cur, or you can add it as a there's a feature we added called an X_ column, where you can add on columns that aren't first generation or native inside of Focus, but you can append additional columns at the end. That could be a potential use case for it. But again, alternatively, then you could go back to the source data at the end of the day for those use cases. But I would challenge folks who are looking at this. What are those edge use cases you don't see within Focus today, and bring that to us too, so we can have that conversation. At least worst case, get it in the backlog. best case, we start having a conversation and it's someone brings something we haven't thought of, and we're able to work collaboratively and together towards introducing that in the focus. We had some really good face-to-face conversations in Barcelona back in November on some things that we hadn't thought of, and it was awesome. It was truly awesome, and so I'm looking forward to in June at FinOps X in San Diego, similar conversations. And you don't have to be, and I'll say this because it's been asked, like, hey, I'm really new to FinOps space. Like, how can I contribute, or I feel really apprehensive towards contributing initially, like maybe even dubious. Like, this is way overwhelming. It's like, no, like, please come forward and ask questions, and because you'll likely trigger something that we didn't even think of, right? And we've been able to iterate on that and have very open, frank conversations with people, and we'll get a better product at the end of the day by welcoming people of all experience levels across the board on this.
No, makes sense. And obviously there is the huge benefit of standardizing everything. So it's always important to remember that. And on top of that, you have mitigations. You can always go back to the core. You have the X columns that you can customize to your own needs. And if you have feedback or ideas of things that need to be added, you can always reach out to the foundation or assume it to you as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So Larry, let's go to the second part, my favorite part of the podcast, which is talking to you more on the personal level. Today you live in Clyde, Ohio, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you started your career actually in IT and over time transitioned to FinOps. How did you make this transition?
Yeah, I have lived in Ohio most of my life, and a little stint in Illinois as a co-op, and then little fun over in Europe, a little bit. But computer science graduate from Bowling Green State University, and my first several years, I'll say, as a mainframe software engineer, working on the mainframe and its technologies and things. And it was a great period of time. It taught me a lot. I got to work with a lot older individuals, and it was they taught me a lot about that, and that's where I learned about the nothing tests like production, or another phrase, it stows, it goes. If the code compiles, you do it to production, that sort of thing. It's that's funny, but learned a lot from them, but then started getting really interested into the data and data warehousing. Built a large data warehouse back in the early 2000s or late 2000s that people said couldn't be done. 7 years of data, 130 million transactions and things, and built that, and then jumped into database operations and architecture, and over the next decade or so, just kept working within data and enabling other people, and started getting into cost data and why things cost the way they do, and working with vendors and technologies and not just database, but other areas too, and assisting others. And almost 3 years ago, when I came to Twilio, got thrown into a manager role over a very small team as well, but a lot more closely aligned to cloud and cloud costs and that, and just have grown it since. So it's been a lot of fun transitioning from where I was to where I am today, and where are we going to here in the future.
That's great. And Larry, anything you do outside of work for fun?
Yeah, I was hoping that would be nicer weather here today. I would sit outside showing my pool and stuff, but we like to spend time outside with my family and here in Clyde. So we've got a pool outside here. That's fun. Little dog, he's running around outside. Outside my office here, but that or just kicking back and reading a good book or something. So
that's great. I love reading book as well. I always have at least one book that I read. I feel like it's really, really important when everything is screens and stimulations. Getting in front of a book is probably one of
It is. It is. I've really enjoyed reading your book too, Elon. So,
my.
folks who are I'll say either security minded, obviously, because it's a cybersecurity like book, but it's a great story. Lots of different stories that you've written in there, and I know we chatted about it too. But yeah, getting away from technology, putting the phone aside, just cracking open a good book and relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the ad. By the way, the book is called The Battle for Your Computer. For those of you watching in YouTube, you can see it right here behind me. Highly recommended by Larry Advey. Great. So, Larry, thank you very much for everything you shared with us. If people want to reach out to you asking about focus or other topics, what is the best way? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way to hit me up, or if you're on the FinOps Foundation Slack, I'm also there too. So either of them work.
Sounds good. Larry, thank you so much for joining us.
Yep. Thank you, Elon. I've had fun.
I had fun as well. I'm sure that our audience also had a lot of fun. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. Larry, thank you again for joining us. This has been another amazing episode of FinOps in Action. See you next time. That wraps up another episode of FinOps in Action. Thank you for joining. For show notes and more, please visit finopsinaction.com. This show is brought to you by Point 5, empowering teams to optimize cloud costs with deep detection and remediation tools that drive action.